That's right.
Have already happened to witnesses.
All right, references to obstruction inside the affidavit.
Yeah, so one of the bases for getting this affidavit is concerns about obstruction. Of course, tampering with witnesses would count, but there's also a concern about what happened with documents. Now, they include a letter from DOJ to Donald Trump's lawyers back in June asking that a room at Mar-a-Lago where the documents had stored been secured and all the boxes be preserved in that room in their current condition. So DOJ tells the people down at Mar-a-Lago, keep these here, keep them secure, don't move them. But we learned in the search warrant that DOJ said we need to search in all these different areas, including a storage room in the residential suite, Pine Hall, Donald Trump's office, and other spaces. And Maggie Haberman has reported they did find documents in the closet of Donald Trump's office. So that suggests those boxes and documents had been moved around.
There was a surprise inclusion in the filing on...
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
So, Neil, let's underline something that you said and expand on it a little bit. Not only has Donald Trump never once explained to the American people why he took all of these documents, why he took these classified documents, these top secret documents out of the White House. None of his defenders on television do. Lindsey Graham doesn't. Lindsey doesn't say that's a proper thing to do. We saw Roy Blunt yesterday saying that Trump shouldn't have done it. I mean, all we have is...
He doesn't deny he took them.
And well, of course, none of them deny that he took them because we know he took them, but nobody's explaining why. The Wall Street Journal editorial page writes an op-ed, writes an editorial saying, is that it? Never once addressing why there was any legitimate reason for him to take the documents. So now we've gotten to the stage where Lindsey's not talking about that. Instead, he's saying, if you prosecute him like you would prosecute any other elected official.
Now I agree with Rush. I'm too stupid to make up my own mind.
So how do you assess the risk that President Trump will actually be indicted?
Well, look, nothing in the release of this affidavit is helpful to the former president. Nothing that we have learned in the last week supports his case. And with all of that said, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be indicted. I still believe that it's more likely than not that he probably won't be indicted. I think I'm turning into one of the few people out there who seems to think that, because there are just simply going to be a number of factors that go into this. It's going to include the fact that he's the former president of the United States. And some people will say, well, wait a second, why would he possibly be treated differently than anybody else? And the answer is because when you're the president or the former president, there are specific rules and procedures that apply. There are certain things you're allowed to do that other people aren't allowed to do that change the equation. And of course, despite the fact that everyone will say, well, we're just evaluating this on the law, there's really no such thing. Yes, there are words of the statute, but there's going to be some level of prosecutorial discretion here from Attorney General Garland.
Right, and that would depend on, in part, whether or not there's any evidence that the president was participating in some kind of obstruction of justice. If they just wanted to get the documents back, that would be one thing. But if there is evidence on either surveillance photo or witness from witnesses that the president was involved in obstruction, that could change this equation.
It could, absolutely. And that's going to be the key question, I think, is how hard did he or somebody else try to avoid having these documents turned over, and why? What exactly was happening? And I think that is going to be a critical question here. We don't know the answer to it. That was the most significant redaction in the search warrant affidavit, was all the information surrounding obstruction. So we're going to have to wait and see. As Pierre reported, this is still the relatively early stages of this investigation. And most importantly, I don't think we're going to hear anything about a possible indictment until after the midterm elections. So I do think there's going to be a period here of calm as they continue to investigate this quietly and behind the scenes.
It's hard to associate the words calm with former President Trump, but I take your point. Dan Abrams, thanks very much.
15 minutes later.
There is a new push from very different corners to learn more about exactly what the FBI seized from the home of former President Donald Trump 3 weeks ago today. And a big question, what was at risk to national security or intelligence assets like spies working for the U.S. government because Mr. Trump kept sensitive secrets at his private club in Florida?
This morning, the latest twists on the Trump FBI search. 2 separate moves for Mar-a-Lago damage control. First, the Director of National Intelligence has told key leaders in Congress that she has launched an assessment of the potential risk to national security if secrets seized from the former president's home had been compromised. 11 sets of classified documents were removed in the search, plus another 184 classified documents recovered earlier, as described in the affidavit. Democrats say that danger is real.
He could be putting our national security at risk. He could be putting the lives of individual people who work for the United States at risk.
And the second legal twist. A Florida federal judge appointed by President Trump writes that she is prepared to grant his request to appoint what's known as a special master, an independent official to review everything seized by the FBI. The judge also wants a more detailed list of what was removed and where those documents are now. Judge Aileen Cannon is giving the DOJ until tomorrow to respond. Some Republicans say more oversight of this investigation is needed.
If you're going to take unprecedented action and raid a former president's house, well, you better have a strategy for unprecedented transparency.
But other Republicans say Mr. Trump should have complied immediately.
For understanding he turned over a lot of documents, he should have turned over all of them.
It'll be up to DOJ whether or not that reaches the level of indictment. But this is disgusting in my mind. And like this, no president should act this way, obviously.
Still, Mr. Trump's allies warn such a move by the DOJ could be met with major backlash.
I'll say this. If there's a prosecution of Donald Trump for mishandling classified information, there'll be riots in the streets.
Former President Trump has used his social media to insist he has done nothing wrong and to repeatedly accuse the Justice Department and FBI of political persecution, even prosecutorial misconduct. And there will be a hearing this Thursday on that issue involving the special master. Craig?
Kelly O'Donnell for us there in Washington. Kelly, thank you.
This is how legends are born.